Let's break down 6 sneaky starts heading into Week 10 of the 2024 fantasy football season. These players may be out there on the waiver wire, they may be sitting on your bench, but with the bye weeks here in Week 10, with more injuries, maybe you guys need to consider one of these players who, due to their matchups or overall opportunities, may provide some sneaky upside going into Week 10. All right, let's start the video with Rico Dowdle of the Dallas Cowboys, who's had a double-digit performance in 4 straight starts, sitting as the RB34 on the season, averaging 12.5 fantasy points per game. But got 2 things going on here. Let's start with the fact that Dak Prescott is not going to be playing in Week 10. CeeDee Lamb might not be playing in Week 10. We got Cooper Rush as a starting quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys in Week 10. So we have a little bit of a lower perceived value, to say the least, of the Cowboys offense here in Week 10. And on top of that, they're going up against the Philadelphia Eagles, who their defense has really sharpened up as the season has gone on. And their run defense looks very solid, allowing the 3rd fewest fantasy points to the running back position. But the way I look at this is sometimes you still have some running backs who can make the most out of a bad matchup, right? I talked about Rachaad White in last week's video as still being a good start going up against the Kansas City Chiefs, allowing the fewest fantasy points to opposing running backs, mainly because of his work in the passing game. He did find a way to score a touchdown this past week and have a double-digit fantasy performance. And I think that Rico Dowdle probably doesn't have a high ceiling this week, similar to Rachaad White last week, but he could still come through with a double-digit fantasy performance because he's still very involved in the passing game with 12 targets in his last 2 starts, 3 receiving touchdowns in his last 4 starts. So I still think that Rico Dowdle is going to be a big part of the game plan this week. It's a bad matchup here. Don't know really what we're going to get with Cooper Rush at quarterback. He's put together some wins before and everything, so I'm not trying to discredit him, but certainly this offense is going to look a little bit different, and the Eagles here could definitely come through and make a big statement this week in this division. Cowboys, their season might be at its wit's end, but still, I think Rico Dowdle is going to be a big part of the game plan this weekend. One of the more fantasy-relevant players as the Cowboys season continues to progress, even if things are looking a little bit gloomy for the Cowboys. So if you own Rico Dowdle, you don't have any better options on your bench, I still think he's a solid, sneaky start here in Week 10. Right, next up is Tyler Allgeier of the Atlanta Falcons. And I like Allgeier this week as a potential flex play if you're struggling to find somebody to plug in this week, because the Saints' run defense is so incredibly bad. And we know Allgeier is a pure handcuff. We know Bijan's going to get all the touches, and Bijan has been heavily involved in the past couple weeks, involved in the passing game, all of that. I mean, he has 21.5 or more fantasy points in 4 straight games. Like, he's going to be the workhorse running back. But we've seen Allgeier have double digits twice so far on the season, in Week 4 against the Saints and in Week 6 against the Carolina Panthers. So against bad run defenses, those are the times where we can definitely see Allgeier come in and spell Bijan a little bit more. And I could see this game turning into one of those games where the Falcons are up ahead of the Saints pretty early in this game. And I don't quite know if the Saints are going to be able to match the Falcons in this game with the amount of injuries that they're dealing with. So we could certainly see Allgeier get some work throughout this game, get some goal line work. He got goal line work this past week against Dallas. He only had 7.8 fantasy points, but he did score a touchdown. So I think that Allgeier, well, I still view him as a pure handcuff to Bijan Robinson, can certainly have some opportunities here due to the matchup, due to the game script. So if you have nothing better, you got to throw in a flyer here, and Allgeier sitting on your bench is at least worth a flex that you can cross your fingers on and hope that he stumbles into the end zone here in Week 10. Last running back is another handcuff, and that's Ray Davis of the Buffalo Bills, who certainly has had some standalone value in the past couple weeks with double-digit performances in 4 straight games. But we got to break that down a little bit further. Week 6, we saw James Cook not play. We know what Ray Davis can do. If he is going to be the RB1 and James Cook misses time, that's why he's a great handcuff. He had 18.2 fantasy points in that matchup, 11.7 the following week, but kind of a garbage time touchdown against the Tennessee Titans. Then Week 8, nothing because he's just a handcuff, 2.9 fantasy points. Then Week 9 against the Miami Dolphins, he had that big catch that led to a touchdown, 70 receiving yards and a receiving touchdown, but just 20 yards off of 4 carries against the Miami Dolphins run defense, who's awful in Week 9. So This week against the Indianapolis Colts on the road, I just have one of those feelings that this could be one of those games where the Bills come out, make a big statement, score a lot of points. The Colts continue to struggle like they did in week 9. And this could be one of those games where it gets a little bit ugly for the Colts. And therefore, the Bills are trying to keep James Cook out of this game a little bit, spell him, keep him healthy for that big week 11 matchup against the Kansas City Chiefs before the Bills hit that bye week in week 12 and have another huge matchup against the 49ers in week 13 right out of the bye. So ultimately, I think Ray Davis is risky, just as risky as Allgeier, but ultimately, he could definitely get some goal line work here, see him spell James Cook a little bit, get some more touches if the Bills are really putting it on the Indianapolis Colts, which I think there is a strong chance that happens. So if you got nothing better, you got to cross your fingers. We have seen some value in the past couple weeks out of Ray Davis, even when James Cook was healthy. And I think we could certainly see that happen again here in week 10. Moving along to the wide receiver position. In last week's video, we talked about Xavier Legette, who sits at 53% rostered. So he still may be out there on your waiver wire. And he had double-digit fantasy points this past week. 6 targets, 4 catches, 33 receiving yards, and a touchdown, 13.9 fantasy points. He has double digits in 3 of his last 4 matchups. And he gets a great matchup this week in that early morning game overseas against the Giants, allowing the 22nd most fantasy points to the wide receiver position. And Xavier Legette is a wide receiver 1 on his team, okay? Adam Thielen has yet to be activated from IR. I don't really have any other option on this team that makes me feel like they're going to take away value from Xavier Legette in the receiving game. Jalen Coker, just 3 targets this past week, just 2 catches. I know he can do some stuff, but he hasn't really been that good. I mean, a garbage time touchdown in week 8 against the Broncos, a decent game against the Bears in week 5. But outside of that, 6 or less fantasy points in every game. You take away that garbage time touchdown, didn't really do a whole lot against the Broncos either. So I'm not worried about anyone taking away a ton of volume from Xavier Legette. We have seen some volume go to Jatavion Sanders at the tight end position, but ultimately Xavier Legette is a wide receiver 1 on the Panthers. And I always say it, bad offenses still produce good fantasy players. Wide receiver 1s, no matter what team they're on, have some sort of value, especially in good matchups. So Legette might be out there on the waiver for you. He might be sitting on your bench. I think he's a decent flex option. Maybe not the craziest ceiling here, but should have a good floor going into week 10. One line on Underdog that I think is sneaky good here in week 10 is Xavier Legette's total receiving yards, sitting at 31.5 receiving yards. He has hit that in each of the last 2 games. He's got this great matchup against the Giants, and he is truly playing as a wide receiver 1 going into the week. I also don't mind his reception line sitting at 3.5 receptions. He's also hit that in the last 2 games. So I'd be heading straight to Underdog. Take the over on Legette's receiving yards. And guys, all new users who sign up with promo code TheCatch are getting a free NFL Pick'em to use toward week 10 of the season. Take your free Pick'em. Take the over on Legette's total receiving yards, and once both of those lines hit, you're going to automatically triple your cash entry. On top of that, Underdog is also giving all new users who sign up with promo code TheCatch, that link is down below, a 50% deposit match up to $1,000. So make sure you guys head straight to Underdog, take advantage of that. Get your free Pick'em, take the over on Legette's total receiving yards, have an opportunity to triple your cash entry, and while you're doing it, you're going to earn up to $1,000 in bonus cash on Underdog when you sign up with promo code TheCatch. That link is down below. Next up is Ray-Ray McCloud of the Atlanta Falcons, and this one's going to be contingent on the health of Drake London for me. So London has logged a limited practice as he's dealing with that hip injury, but if we get the word that Drake London's going to miss this week, then Ray-Ray McCloud should step in as a viable streaming option at the wide receiver position. And a good matchup against the Saints. Not the best matchup, but a good matchup as they're allowing the 17th most fantasy points to the wide receiver position. And he's just going to fill in nicely as a wide receiver 2 here. We saw that last week. He got 1 red zone target, which he turned into a touchdown, which allowed for 12.5 fantasy points. So we know that guys like Darnell Mooney as well as Kyle Pitts are going to get more targets here in the run game. Bijan Robinson, Tyler Allgeier, like we talked about, are going to be leaned on. But if Drake London misses this Week 10 matchup against the Saints, which there's probably going to be a push for him to play because this is a divisional game. You never know what's going to happen. You want to rack up those divisional wins. But if Drake London does not play this week, or maybe even if he does play, and he sees a little bit of overall limited snaps because maybe this game isn't super competitive, Ray-Ray McCloud could certainly see another nice fantasy stat line like he did in Week 9 against the Cowboys. So let's continue to monitor the situation with the Falcons wide receivers as the week goes on. But we could see some nice opportunity for Ray-Ray McCloud in Week 10. Last but not least is Noah Brown of the Washington Commanders, who I think is a nice little sneaky start here. We talked about him in the waiver wire video earlier in the week. He's moved up to 13% rostered. I think he was at 5% rostered going into Week 9. So I talked about it throughout the course of the season. I hope somebody can step up for the Washington Commanders and be their wide receiver too. Somebody needs to. And Noah Brown over the last 2 weeks has had 6 targets in both games and double digits in both games. Now, you take away the Hail Mary play in Week 8, he doesn't have double digits, but can't take it away. It happens. So 16.3 fantasy points in Week 8, 11 fantasy points in Week 9. It is a tough matchup here at home against the Steelers, allowing the 11th fewest fantasy points to the wide receiver position so far on the season. But if somebody's going to get involved here at the wide receiver position, that's not Terry McLaurin, it's going to be Noah Brown. We didn't see a lot of involvement from Zach Ertz in Week 9. At the end of the day, I believe in this Commanders offense. They've continued to get better as the season has progressed. The pass games continue to get better as the season has progressed. So I think that if anybody's going to step up here, it's going to be Noah Brown. If you're absolutely desperate, especially in a deeper league, I think Noah Brown is a player that you can definitely get off the waiver wire, plug in, cross your fingers, and hopefully he can still bring you at least 10 fantasy points, get you a nice floor, maybe have some sneaky upside here in Week 10. That'll do it for today's video. There are 6 sneaky starts going into Week 10 of 2024 fantasy football. Don't forget, guys, I'm answering all fantasy football questions in the comment section down below. So if you guys need anything whatsoever, moving into Week 10 of the season, drop me a comment. I'll be sure to answer every comment before Sunday's slate of games. And on top of that, we've got everything you guys could possibly need here on the channel for Week 10 to help you guys dominate the week. So make sure you guys are checking out all the videos. But most importantly, make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel so that you don't miss out on any of the content. With that, I'll say, thank you guys so much for watching and or listening. And remember, you saw it here on The Catch.